Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the stream. Thank you, Hunter, Russ, and Justin, for the comments so far. Guys, if you are new here, let us know what stocks you're watching. Tom and I will cover them over, I don't want to say, yeah, I could say over the night. The market kind of tanked off big time, and, specifically, we're looking at the SPY. We can see it actually hit lows of $419.50 in after hours, but it's kind of like reversing right now. So it looks like, we're just seeing like a lot of chop, you can say. Like the market sold off pretty hard yesterday, and now we're trying to come back up. So definitely be on the lookout for that. We have Justin saying, good morning, Hunter, Mike, and Tom. Thanks for everything you guys do. Looking at the 42 strike call option on AMC for July 2nd. So let's take a look at it. So he said the 42 strike call. Let's see. What do you think about this one, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, he is getting pretty far, out there, especially on expiration for AMC, which is nice. And he's pretty far in the money on that call already. So it's honestly not too bad. But personally, I'd be really careful with it. On the 1 year daily, AMC just looks like it was tapering off just a little bit yesterday. So if that continues today, I'd be a little careful with that call. But I like how he went really far in the money and he has a little bit of time at least.
Yeah, so I'm trying to see. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely pretty deep in the money, which is awesome. I think that's awesome how you're buying like a solid quality option. If we look at, I'm trying to pull up some of the details for you on this specific option. All right, cool. So for the 42 strike call, you're going to be paying around $500 worth of that just in time value. And it does expire like in 2 weeks. So I don't know. I mean, the time decay is still going to be pretty bad. It's not horrible. I think you're getting a much higher quality option than most other people are. So it's not bad. AMC is holding support at like 52. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Tom? Like whether levels or just anything?
Yeah, it is sitting right on that support around like 52.40, 52.30 level. And it also is hitting like right off of that 1,000 SMA at the same time. And, it's been kind of really moving off of that SMA over the past few days. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some good movement up off of that support and that SMA this morning. And it does look pretty hot. AMC is moving at open initially here. And hopefully that can keep going. But, it was running up and we're kind of like, going a little bit flat right now, but hopefully it can break out above that $55 resistance and we can start to see a pretty good move out of it. I know that we've been waiting for it to break $60 and it's just failed to do that over the past few days. It finally broke 60, but came right back below it. So I would say definitely make it break out about $60 again before just going all in on calls on it.
Gotcha. So I'm not sure if you guys saw Palantir this morning, but it's running up pretty well. Like it's not up, it's not even technically green on the day yet, but it's just a nice candle to start open. Sometimes when we see this, we do see Palantir like have a nice run up, and it has been consolidating a lot, like over the past like week and a half or so. So I just want to point that out, just let everyone know it's on my watch list.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks hot. It's been running up the past couple days. It did have that one red day that was kind of bad, but it held that 24 support and came right back up. So I'm honestly looking for it to break out again. And whenever we look at it on the 1 year daily, it's really consolidated around these levels for like the past few weeks. And we've seen a lot of stocks start to break out of those consolidation levels. And I would not be surprised if Palantir ended up breaking out to the upside eventually over the next couple of days. I mean, honestly, the stock's been moving pretty hot. Like I said, it did have that one bad day, but even early on that day, it started to break out and looks like it's breaking out again right now, running up on the 1 minute as we speak up to 24.90, almost back up to $25 here.
And then how about Neo too? It's having a pretty strong open. It opened like around 45 and it's already at 45.50 and it's running up like more right now.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, we've been looking at Neo the past few days too. Whenever you look at like the 5 day, 15 minute, it starts to look really hot for Neo and some of those other stocks that we've been watching. And on the 1 year daily, Neo also looks good, popped up above that resistance right around like $46 and is just kind of like hovering right around there today. So we're going to have to see if it can kind of like hold its level and start to break out. But I think definitely looking at it on the daily, it looks pretty solid, like it's going to keep going to the upside. And I like how it came down and touched the SMA also before going back up. So that's usually a pretty good sign, for bullish sentiment on stocks like that. But they have a huge resistance up here around 50. So definitely be careful as we go up, but we're pretty far away from that.
Alrighty, so guys, let us know what stocks you're watching. Give us some stocks, you guys like or looking at, whatever. Share some stocks in the comments. We have AMD popping up too, Tom. Like, do you have any
Really?
do you have any like specific setups or anything? Like, I mentioned AMD because it's also having a pretty strong open.
Yeah, that's actually awesome. I love AMD. If it can start to break out above this upper resistance around like 82.25 to 82.30, I think the AMD could be one of the better plays in the market. And whenever we're starting to see these semiconductor stocks come back up, it just really helps stocks like AMD, of course, which is like one of the leaders in that sector. And they bounced right off that $80 support and ran right to the upside. It opened today all the way up to 81. Definitely looking at it. I don't think it'll be able to break out above like 82 or 82.20 over the rest of today. I think it'll take like maybe going into tomorrow or next week to finally break out above this level. But it does look like a very nice runner. And who knows, if we do catch some good momentum today, I think it could get through. It's just the chances are pretty low. That would be a pretty big move out of AMD for it to break all the way up to $83 today. But I think that definitely over the next few days, keep your eye on AMD. And whenever you look at AMD on the 1 year daily, I talked about like Palantir and Zoom kind of consolidating for a little while, but AMD has just been stuck between $80 and like $83 for like the past 2 or 3 weeks in a row. And it's also right on that 100 SMA. And I think that once it finally breaks out of this, we're going to see a pretty big move either to the upside or the downside. So definitely be ready on AMD because I think that once we see that move, it'll be pretty significant.
All right, Tom, you have to check out CVAC. Jerry brought it up. This thing is tanking. It's down basically 50% off of basically COVID-19. Their COVID-19 vaccine study failed, and they also got downgraded. It looks brutal.
Yeah, this is what happens, I guess, whenever those like studies just go wrong. But wow, that's a bad drop, down 48%. Would have never expected something like that to happen. And whenever I look at like the 1 year daily, the stock was looking decent, like it was holding its ground. It was bouncing a lot off those resistances and then back down. But no one, I don't think anybody would have really expected it to fall down this much, all the way back down to $50. And I will say in 2020, it was down here around like that $44 to it even IPO'd like right around $36. So there's definitely like a lot of movement that this stock has had. And that sucks to see it down that much, like off of the news like this, Mike. It's just one of those unfortunate things that whenever you're a company that develops vaccines or you're like a biopharma company, that this type of bad news, especially like with failures on trying to get drugs out and stuff like that, those always hurt the stock. And it just seems like all that research and development that they've been doing for the past couple of years just got wiped away. So keep that in mind that they might try to have to come up with something new now to save themselves.
Yeah, so I always like to do this when there's huge moves in the market, but if we look at the CVAC 60 strike puts, yesterday these things were going for around 20 bucks, and today they were going for 1,340. So like those puts just straight up exploded, over 5,000% gains in a day. But no one could have predicted it, so it's just I know it sucks because we all missed it, but it's just one of those unpredictable events. And then we have Vicky saying TWLO, AAPL, and CRM, please. So Tom, what are you thinking about TWLO?
Yeah, honestly, TWLO looks very nice. It's running up today very nicely. There's a good resistance up here around $340. We're getting really close to that, but it looks like the movement is very good out of TWLO and it might break that back to the upside. I would say it has a setup very similar to like NIO right now, to where it's just trying to break out and it's just having a couple of like red consolidation days before it breaks out. And it looks like over the next couple of days, it might like follow along with NIO and maybe start to finally like break out above that resistance it's at right around 350.
Sounds good. We have I'm Fierce saying Baba is running. It's about time, Tom. I mean, this stock has just been getting hammered for Baba, Tom, BABA.
Bob, I thought you said Baidu.
No, it's been getting hammered for like the past couple months now. I think it's way overdue for a pop back up.
Yeah, me too. And I like how it held that support pretty well. I'm glad that it was able to hold its ground yesterday with all that Powell stuff going on. There was definitely some crazy movement going on there with that, but it's nice to see Baba popping up off that bottom support. And I think that like whenever we go look at on like the daily chart, Baba's down there around those supports. And I think like maybe over the next couple months, we could see it up maybe somewhere around like 240 or somewhere like that.
All right, and then we have to get to Apple and CRM for Vicky again. AAPL, I think it looks good, and I think I actually really like this one over the next couple weeks. Yeah, I like it as long as the market doesn't get like smacked. Like I know like the market pulled back a lot yesterday. As long as like it's fine for the market to fall, but as long as we don't see like a ton of selling pressure, then I really like Apple.
Yeah, me too. I think Apple looks like one of the best setups. And earlier on in the week, Mike, I know Apple started to really run up like on Monday, and it kind of seemed like we were going to see a very nice breakout, but Powell kind of put the halts onto that at least for those couple of days right before he started speaking. But looks like we might finally break out above 131. And if we do, I think that's going to be a very nice move. And honestly, Apple looks like one of the better setups I've seen all morning, and it looks very nice. Even on the 5 minute, the 1 minute, the 15 minute, the daily, they all look like they're at pretty good levels right now. And it's really starting to hold like that 130 support and just move to the upside off of that, which I really like. And I think that over the next couple of weeks, we might be able to safely target somewhere like 135 or maybe 140 up there.
All right, and then CRM, Salesforce. Let's check it out. They're not looking bad. I think they still look pretty good overall. Their next resistance is like 250, so expect some chop around that area.
Yeah, I would say just look out for 250, like Mike said, but I really like Salesforce and CRM. I've liked it for a long time now, and I like that it bounced off supports and it's holding up well, kind of like I would have expected it to do.
Alrighty, let's see. And then we have, let's see, Jerry saying Tesla puts coming in. Let's see, I didn't even see the sweeps yet. Let's see. Oh yeah, I do see those Goldens. Wow, there's actually quite a few of them. I know that they do have short expirations. Yeah, they expired June 25th, 440 strike puts. I would assume that they would be shorting these puts, but I'll double check them in a couple minutes. But then we have Matthew saying Google picked up AMD for their chips. Interesting. Let's see. AMD, yeah, it's running pretty well.
Yeah, it is running very well. I think that this might be the catalyst that we finally need to break out with AMD, and it's looking very nice, honestly. I think that it could start to keep going up. And earlier, whenever we were talking about it, it was only around 81, and we're sitting around like 81.75 right now. So I really like AMD. I think it's going to be a good stock over the next couple of weeks. And I especially like with this news with Google, I think that might just be, like I said, the catalyst that'll finally like push it up out of this range that it's been stuck in. And once it breaks out above like 82.33 or like 82.50, where I think we're going to see a pretty big move.
All right, and then we have a lot of people talking about NVIDIA. Tom, this one is exploding. Click said it broke all-time highs.
Yeah, I don't know. You remember last night how we covered in the video about Intel CEO saying that there'd be 10 good years
True.
For all these semiconductor stocks. And I'm not sure if that's what's making them go up today or not, but it's nice to see them running anyways. And NVIDIA is breaking that all-time high again, running up there and looking very nice. We've been watching this one for a while, and it has that split on like July 20th. So look out for that. And most of the time, these stocks just keep flying up right into that split. But I'm very curious to see if Intel is green today, and it's slightly green, but overall, like NVIDIA, AMD are doing very well. Let's see how like Qualcomm and MU are doing, and they're very slightly green, but MU is actually red. But seems like NVIDIA and AMD are definitely the leaders from today. And AMD has that good news, and NVIDIA has that good news coming up too. So maybe that's just the main reasons why they're flying.
And I also think the split news has a huge impact on NVIDIA. Think about what happened with Apple.
Yeah, that's the news I meant by the way, about NVIDIA.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So then we have Jay saying thoughts on SAVA. SAVA, let me check this out. Yeah, it's running up pretty well right now on the daily. It's doing very well on the daily. Like, what is this? And well, it's not like a ton of green days in a row, but it's a really solid uptrend. Since April, it went from like $30 all the way up to 81, which is pretty awesome. To be honest, I have not been following this company too much fundamentally. It looks like they are a biotech stock, and kind of like we saw with CVAC earlier in the stream, like when they have good news, these things can literally explode. But at the same time, if bad news comes out, it could be the exact opposite.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big thing to look at here. And, it's really fallen a lot in the past from like 117 all the way down to 33. So don't be surprised if it has a lot of up and down movement, but it does seem like a pretty decent stock. And I don't know like what they developed or what they do, but it seems like they would be doing something pretty decent to have this type of movement. So I would definitely look into like their fundamentals, but for like the shorter term, just be very careful. It looks like it's still going to keep breaking out, but just keep in mind it's moved a lot in the past. So, to me, it's a pretty scary stock to grab, at least right now. But, as long as you've looked at the fundamentals and know that maybe they have a drug that other people don't have, then it might be a pretty good option to get this stock.
All right. So, Tom, if we look at the SPY intraday right now, he had a pretty solid run up, and now it's pulling back a little bit. It looks like it is making a lower high as of right now. I know it's still super, super early in the day, so it's way too early to tell, but it's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's not a good sign. We're seeing, lots of stocks actually like slightly come down today, even though the SPY is moving up a little bit. A lot of these stocks are still, going down, and specifically like the bank stocks. Like we go look at like Bank of America, it's back down. JP Morgan has a pullback again today, right back down to support. So we're going to have to see how these banks end up moving. But, with the overall market kind of moving back up, it seems like it sent banks down. So we'll just have to see how it ends up moving. But, banks moved up yesterday off of Powell talking, and they'd kind of been getting killed for the past couple of weeks and kind of seemed like they were going to try to pop back up. But we're just failing to see that today. And it seems like the SPY is just kind of consolidating right in the middle of its range and not really picking a solid direction yet.
Alrighty. Yeah, I'm with you. Definitely. Then we have Hunter saying 40 strike puts for next money going for $260. So I would assume that's AMC. Let's check it out. 40 strike puts for next week. Let me pull it up real quick. Yeah, they're pretty expensive. They're really expensive, actually. It just goes to show you what high implied volatility can do, especially like when stocks like really start to run. It just shows like how volatile a stock is. But yeah, definitely very expensive. Then we have Sean saying, good morning, everyone. Bought Peloton claws yesterday for $125 each. Sold this morning for $200. Could see Peloton return back to 110, 112 area in the short term. Let's check it out. Let's see. Yeah, what do you think about this one, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could return back up there as well. Looks like it hit off resistance a couple of times, and it's also hitting right off of these SMAs, which is not a good sign. Whenever we see those SMAs kind of get hit like this, it normally takes a little while to break through. And also Peloton has a pretty big resistance there around like 114 to 115. So really watch out. But I will say the way it's kind of turning up today looks pretty nice. So hopefully we can see a continued move, maybe back up to like 110 to 112, like he said. And I think we could easily see that. There is a big resistance at like 108, but I think it looks pretty good possibly for a move back to the upside. We'll just have to see how the movement ends up going. And I think it's going to depend on like how the overall growth sector does just based off of like what's going on here.
All right. And then we have Kathy saying JP Morgan, please. All right, Tom. We have JP Morgan and just banks in general. They had a pretty solid day yesterday. Looks like some of the banks are pulling back a little bit right now. JP Morgan sitting right around that 155 support. It looks like it's holding it right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's holding that support. It's kind of coming up very slightly off of it. It did dip very, very slightly below support. So, I guess I see why some people got a little bit worried about it, but it seems pretty good so far off that. Hopefully we can hold that and go back to the upside. That's definitely been a very solid support over the past few weeks. And it's just unfortunate to not see banks have that continuation that they had yesterday. It kind of seemed like a pretty good setup. And even today in pre-market, we saw a pretty good move to the upside out of these banks. And then today it opened, they just got slaughtered like right off the bat. And hopefully they can hold these levels and start to go back up, or else it's not going to seem like a good day for them. That's for sure. So we're definitely looking at this 155 support pretty hard for JP Morgan and seeing like if it can hold there.
All right, we have Jerry saying Tesla. Tesla's exploding, Tom. I think if we continue to see stocks like Tesla and Apple rally back up, the market will stay up. You're on TSEM, Tesla, TSLA. So yeah, it's popping up. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Tesla's looking pretty good today. Sorry, managing like I'm doing a lot of stuff at once here, but
Yeah.
trying to make Tesla move out above 610. Let's see how that can move today. But I honestly kind of like it. It's not, it doesn't look like it's in the worst setup. I would say it's kind of 50-50 right now with Tesla. If it's going to start to recover back up and maybe break this trend line and move back to the upside, or if it's going to finally start falling off again. And, I'm wondering if Michael Burry's still short, because this is a lot of flat movement here. And even if he is short, this would definitely be killing the premiums if he had puts on them or anything like that. So hopefully he got a lot of time, which he probably did, or he already exited. So I'd definitely be curious to see what he's doing with it. But overall, I mean, Tesla is still kind of in a little bit of a bearish setup here. It's still not looking the best, but hopefully it can start to come up off of this good news. And I think if we see the overall tech sector start to fly back up, I think Tesla will do pretty good, but it's just going to depend, I think, on how that movement goes, because Powell really made the market fluctuate very strangely yesterday. And I think we're going to have to see if that was almost like the catalyst that will kind of help these stocks keep moving up, or if they're going to continue kind of continue their ascent to the downside. I think it's just going to depend on the movement we see over like the next week after this big news that came out.
Sounds good. So we have Tesla and NIO popping up a little bit. I think it's awesome how they're moving, and if they continue up, the market should be just fine, because both of those stocks have a pretty strong influence on, just the market in general. And then we have Russ saying Workhorse and NIO are moving up. So yeah, NIO we just talked about, but Workhorse we have not. It's up around 3% today. It's holding that $15 support pretty well. Workhorse, yeah, Tom, do you have any thoughts on Workhorse?
Yeah, I think it's doing pretty good actually. They had a pretty big short float over the past few days. I saw it somewhere like around 40%, and I like how it's really holding this 1350 support level down here. I think it honestly looks like a pretty nice setup, and it might try to start breaking some of these levels back up to this resistance up here around $18 or $19. And I think it's a pretty good setup here. That doesn't mean just go all in, of course, but whenever I look at the 90-day, 15-minute and everything like that, it looks like the stock is stair-stepping itself back to the upside. And I think we could probably target $16 today. And if we break out above that, then maybe up somewhere around 17.
Awesome. All right. Then we have, let's see, Sean saying thoughts on Snap, good long-term stock. Let's check it out. So I like it. I mean, I have not fundamentally researched them, and I have not gone through all of their financials and everything like that, but their chart looks good. Yeah, I mean, especially over the past year, they did very well. They have supported $50 or so, and the resistance at 65. I like it personally, and what's cool about Snapchat is it's not a cheap stock, but it's not super expensive either. And their IV's around 51%, so it's actually a pretty good stock to sell puts on. So what you can do, Sean, is you can go out to let's say the July 16th expiration, and maybe you sold the 55 strike put. You'll get paid over $100 for doing that right now. And in the worst case scenario, you just buy Snapchat at $55 each, and it can be a win-win if you like it for the long term.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that would be the best way is for the longer term, but in the short term, it did have some pretty big pullbacks over the past few days. And I like how it's moving back to the upside now, which is a great sign, but it's just one of those weird situations where it fell down a lot harder than I think a lot of other stocks did. And whenever you look at the daily, it's hit off this resistance 4 or 5 times around $65. So there's definitely a key resistance there, and a key support down here around $59, $60. So I think we're just trading between that range, but I think it will eventually break out.
All right. And then let's see, we have, actor saying, what's going on with Disney? DIS is not doing anything. It's just a slow and steady stock. It's the IV is only 25%, so it's just not how the stock moves. It's just very, very slow and steady. It has support at 170, resistance at 180. It's basically in the middle of its range right now, but I'm not really bullish or bearish on it in the short term. I am bullish for the long term, but it's not like a high moving stock.
Yeah, it's not, and that's the biggest thing about those types of like low moving stocks. Like we see it like even with like Walmart and some of those other stocks where they just don't move a lot, and it's hard to trade options on stocks like that because they just have no movement to them. And while they can be pretty good sometimes, like how Walmart and KO had like a big red day over the past few days, that's not very common out of stocks like this. And I'll just say that like it's sometimes it's hard because those premiums get killed while it just trades flat for a few days.
Indeed, we have Neo popping up, Tom. Now up 3% on the day. It's really exploding. Check out Tesla again. Yeah, they're holding their ground pretty well. Zoom is up, which is good. One of my favorite stocks. NKLA, they're even running up, Tom. Nikola.
Yeah, NKLA, is that for real, Mike? Are they really
Yeah.
going up?
Oh
Like
yeah.
what's going on here? They don't even have an electric engine developed or anything. So we'll have to see how this ends up
Yeah.
moving. But yeah, this is pretty crazy, honestly, out of Nikola. It's honestly moving pretty well off the technical, off the 100 SMA, and it's maybe moving up to that resistance around $20. So we'll have to see how that ends up moving today. But honestly, pretty good setup here out of Nikola so far. It is on the 1,000 SMA on the 5 minute, so be a little careful, possibly of like a small intraday pullback or something like that. But wow, I can't believe how much Nikola is actually running. And let me know in the comments if you guys are still trading Nikola, because it's definitely been a crazy stock over the past couple of years, that's for sure. And I'm not sure too many people touch it anymore, but let us know in the comments if you do. I definitely am curious to know.
For sure. And then with the next comment, we have Hunter saying TAL is continuing tanking. Oh, and then okay, gotcha. So I know that the previous comment we were talking about CVAC, but TAL, let's check it out. Down around 9%. Wow. And then especially over the past like year or so, like year to date, this thing is down so much. It was at like $91 back in, what was that, like February? And now it's at basically like 21. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, man, that was a big drop we actually saw out of TAL. And I've been hearing about this one getting talked about quite a lot, by Hunter and some of those guys. And I'm just, I'm wondering, like, I haven't really looked into TAL and what they do for the long term, but it seems like short term, this is not a good setup. And man, I don't know, I mean, I love selling puts on stocks, but normally I like doing it when I'd want to own them. And man, this just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like the stock I'd want to hold. That's for sure.
Yep. And then I'm just looking at a couple different things at once now. Then we have Sean saying Nvidia, my favorite stock, is going crazy. 750 is the goal before the split. Like I don't want to bet against it because it is a powerhouse, and we know how Apple and Tesla went crazy with the split. But 750 it's a little far away, but I think it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I think that we could possibly hit 750. And Mike, you're gonna think I'm nuts. I think it could go up to 800 or something like
Really?
that. Yeah, I mean, man, this thing is ripping, and I've never seen, well, I've seen it before, with Tesla and a couple others like Amazon, possibly, but with Nvidia here into this split, it has a whole month still to keep moving. And I think that as we get closer and closer, it could easily edge up to, I think 750 is pretty attainable. That one's not too hard, but 800 is pretty far away. But I think that could happen. I mean, over the past couple of weeks, we moved from 650 up to 728, and I think as long as we just keep seeing these good numbers, and as long as like these semiconductor stocks keep flying, I think that we could see it at least 750. Though 800 is pretty far. I'll give you that, but 750 isn't too bad, especially considering the past 2 days we've moved 20 points. So
Yeah, I for sure. I gotcha. But then Tom, let's take a look at the QQQ. Jerry said QQQ puts looking good, and I'm with you, Jerry. Like they're not bad, but what scares me about this is, when you have Tesla running up a good amount, you have Apple running up. Those two stocks have a huge influence on the market overall, and like if they're popping up, I think it's going to be really hard for the QQQ to fall. So I'm with you, but I'm just very, very cautious.
Yeah, and especially like with Nvidia and AMD flying up too. I mean, Nvidia is a big one in the QQQ as well. And man, I mean, there's just a lot of like good stocks flying up. So personally, I'm not going to be too bearish on the QQQ. I will say intraday, I think the QQQ setup looks bullish more than anything. But when you go out on that daily chart, QQQ is getting a little worrisome. It does look kind of scary. It's almost like triple topped up here around that like 344 level. But I think that over the next couple days, as we start to see these tech stocks go back up, it might finally, break that to the upside. We'll just have to see how it ends up moving. But I think that QQQ could start to break out possibly above those all-time highs, actually. And, it's just like you said, Mike, we're just seeing all these stocks kind of popping to the upside, which is just overall, that's a pretty good sign. And I would think that it would help the QQQ, but I see the bearish setup he's talking about. I just don't think it's going to play out this time.
How about Square though? Square and Roku, they're looking pretty good intraday and even on the daily. Like maybe for like a I don't know like a short term swing. Square is still in like the bottom part of its range. Support at 200, resistance at 280. Right now it's at like 228. I think it definitely has potential.
I think so too. That actually looks like a really solid setup, and it's kind of turning up right into these SMAs as well, specifically the 100 SMA. And I think once it bounced off of that just a couple days ago and came to the downside, and it looks like we're going to break out above that resistance there around like 233.50, which is right where that SMA is. And I would say if we could start to break out, that would be really good movement out of Square. And yeah, it looks like Square, it almost just looks like the same setup as the QQQ. And it looks like very solid, actually. And I could see it keep going.
All right. I'm just trying to see what else is moving. Like, obviously, we have Neo, but we already talked about that one so many times in the stream today. Snap moving up a little bit. How about Cat, though? I know Cat has been pulling back a good amount, like, over, like, the past week or so. Like, I don't know what's going on with this one. I haven't, like, been following it too much, like with their news, but it's really pulling back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I've been waiting for this pullback on Cat for too long now. Like I've been waiting for this pullback since the beginning of 2020. So I'm glad that it's finally happening out of Caterpillar. It just went straight up. I think it was just due to fall at some point. And keep in mind that the high inflation might have been helping them in the short term, but maybe prices are catching up to them now or something like that. And I will say that the price of steel, the price of lumber, and everything like that is probably not helping Caterpillar out at all. It might have been helping it a little bit over the past few years, but now it's obviously just going to be hurting them more and more. And I think that it's obviously a weird thing to see Caterpillar falling off this hard. I mean, that's a lot of red days in a row. And these aren't just like regular, like little drops. These are like pretty big red days out of Caterpillar. And I'm with you, Mike. It's definitely a weird thing to see, but even though it's down, year over year since this time of last year, if we go to June, we're still up around 65% as of right now. So even if we fall down to, $180 on Caterpillar, we're still going to be up 40% year over year. So I think that's a big thing to look at as well, is how much the stock has just went straight up, and it's kind of just coming back down right now. And it's definitely a little scary, but I think that for the longer run, Cat will still be perfectly fine. I just think that obviously stocks go up and stocks go down, and it's just kind of in that little bit of a downward range right now.
All right, and then Hunter's saying OSTK. It's moving pretty well, Tom. It's like holding that $90 support, and I think the next major resistance isn't until 100, but I think it looks pretty good. And I don't know about you guys, like whenever I think like OSTK, I instantly also think of like Fastly and then Zoom. Like they were all kind of like exploding around the same time last year, and they're all kind of in a similar setup, you can say. Like they've all gotten beaten down quite a bit over the past couple months, and they're starting to rally back up, which I love because I'm a big fan of Zoom. But looking back at OSTK, Tom, what levels do you have?
Yeah, I think OSTK looks pretty solid. They had a really good support here around like $85 to $86, which they bounced off of just a couple days ago and started to move back to the upside. I would say as a safe target, and this is going to be pretty safe here, I think you could almost safely target like 94.50, maybe $94. That would be the first resistance I see coming up. I think that that's a pretty safe target there. Like we might hit that pretty easily. And then after that, I see right around $100 as being the next resistance. You could maybe say like 110, but I think 100 is going to be a pretty big level in people's minds as well. And I just definitely make it break out of where it is now. Like I think it could have a pretty good move up to, 94. But if it breaks out above that, I think we could see even a bigger one. Like I said, up to 100 or 110. But the big level I think is going to be $100. But I do really actually like the movement out of Overstock. Like looking at it on the daily chart, it looks very good. Like it possibly might start turning back up, and it's been holding this red trend line for like the past couple months, I should say, and going right back up. So honestly, really good setup. And thanks for the heads up, Hunter. That's honestly a really good stock to watch.
All right, and then we have M saying AMC, AMC, AMC. AMC is holding its ground. It's popping up a little bit. It has a decent amount of volume coming in. It's up like a little over 1% today. Support at 52, and the next major resistance isn't till you can say like 50. You can say like 58.
Yeah, for sure. And what was the ticker again? Sorry, I was updating the position.
Yep, AMC.
AMC, the big one, of course. Yeah, I'm surprised to see them coming back up today. They held that bottom level very nicely. And man, it does look pretty nice. 57 seemed like a decent intraday resistance. So I'd be a little careful there. But honestly, I really like the movement off the SMAs, and it's starting to move up to the upside very nicely. And man, I've been waiting for it to break out above 60, which it finally did, but it kind of posted a little bit of like a head and shoulder setup there where the shoulders hit off of 60 and the head extended up to 64.70. And we're definitely going to have to see how this ends up playing out. But I think if we could really break out above 60, we'll see a pretty good move.
All right. And then I'm just looking at a couple things right now. Let's see. Give me 1 second, Tom. How about we check out AMD?
Yeah, AMD for sure. And the SPY's trying to come back. So I wonder if AMD still ripping on the day, moving up above $82 and moving up above that resistance, which is just very nice. It seems like that news with Google has been very awesome for AMD. And I will say today is the breakout day. It finally broke out above the 100 SMA on my daily chart. And guys, I'm not saying just to go hop into AMD swings or anything like that, but if you want to swing a stock for like the next few days, I think that AMD looks like a pretty solid one to hold. And especially now that we broke out, seems like a pretty solid setup. So we'll have to see how that can move, but it has went up quite a bit today, already up 3.5%. But anytime a stock has good news with Google, it could definitely keep flying. And who knows how high they could go, but I would say target somewhere up around $90 over the next couple of weeks. If you're going to swing it, I think somewhere around there is attainable, especially with this news. And if you wanted to be a little bit safer, maybe somewhere around like 85.
All righty. So we have a great comment from Sean saying the Dow is really falling the past couple days. Sector rotation ? So I'm really glad you brought this up because over like the past couple months, it was the opposite. We would have the Dow rallying and then the NASDAQ kind of just like lingering around doing nothing, right? But now if we take a look at DIA, for example, it definitely is pulling back. It really looks like Cat's chart setup. It's just kind of like falling like a decent amount, where when we look at the QQQ, they're holding their ground and like there's just like more like buying momentum. So I agree with you. I think we're definitely seeing a rotation out of value stocks and into some of these tech stocks. And some of the tech stocks that I think we're rotating into, one, Zoom, which is, I'm definitely biased towards Zoom, but I think they're definitely rotating into Zoom. Also, Apple. Apple is significantly off its highs compared to a lot of other stocks right now. You can even say, I bet some people are definitely rotating into Palantir. You can say Enphase too. Like, I just think we're seeing a really good rotation right now, and I really like it.
Yeah, I love this rotation too. And I like how you point out like Apple and some of those stocks. They actually look very strong. Like Apple on the daily looks like it's in a very strong bullish setup here. I think we could see Apple pop up to like 140 over the next couple of weeks. And whenever we go look at ones like Zoom, Mike, Zoom looks so nice right now. Like it's had a few consolidation days over the past couple of days, and it looks like it's just coiling for a breakout. And man, I think that this setup looks very nice. And I hate to be biased towards Zoom as well. I know it's your stock, but man, it looks very good actually for the next few days. And whenever you're looking at it on the 15-minute, I would say if it could start to break up above like 365, we could start to see a really big move out of Zoom. And even like with Apple, it's starting to really break out of like those highs from yesterday. around like 131. And if we could start to see more movement, I think that this will be a pretty good setup. And man, these stocks like in this rotation is very nice. And it goes to show that, buying the dips and buying smartly off of supports are very good things to do. And, obviously there's always bad news going on that scare people like inflation and stuff like that. But, just keep in mind, you could always cut those positions. It's very rare that something like Apple is just going to fall like 30% or something overnight. It can happen, but it's definitely a pretty rare scenario. And whenever you just pick up shares for the longer run, on these dips down here, it supports like 120 on Apple is just a very good opportunity.
Yep, and then Click saying the bank sector is falling too hard. Yeah, I know. What a crazy fake out from yesterday. Like after the FOMC, banks were rallying really well, and then today just the sellers came right back in. I think part of it has to do with banks being more like value stocks, I guess you can say, and we're just seeing a sector rotation out of them. And, it's really hard to, trade that type of crazy movement, Tom. They were looking great yesterday.
Yeah, they looked awesome yesterday. And even in pre-market today, all the way up into open, they looked nice. Like JP Morgan was all the way up to 158. And then right at open just tanked all the way down. And man, this was a bad move to the downside, to be honest. And man, that was a really big fake out there. And it was definitely looking good yesterday and heading into today. I don't know what happened today with the banks, but it seemed like whenever Powell talked yesterday, he said some stuff that was really helping the banks out. And, it seemed like the banks were going to do pretty well. And then out of nowhere, they just all reverse. We have JP Morgan down, WFC down, Goldman's probably down. Yeah, GS is down too. So it seems like the whole sector is just selling straight off. And I would have to say it has to be something like with the interest rates or something that Powell said they don't like. Maybe they wanted more inflation. I have no idea, but we'll have to see how this continues to move over the next couple of days. But that was definitely crazy to see, especially like on the 1 minute chart, like how much it started to fly up yesterday and then how much it sold off today. And there's not really another sector that did anything like this. Like if we go look at like the SPY, I mean, it's coming down a little bit, but it definitely has not moved like the banks have by any means.
True that. And then we have M saying thoughts on Adobe, ADBE. It looks good, but I really wouldn't touch it right now just because they report earnings in like a day or two. They report earnings after close today. So earnings are a complete gamble. So it's not for me.
Yeah, I think it can make the stock honestly possibly drop again, or it'll go to all-time highs. I think that obviously we're going to see one or the other, but it'll probably result in a pretty large move no matter what happens. And some things that we've been seeing a lot lately are like initially, like in after hours tonight, we might see the stock, fly up to 552 or 554, and then in pre-market tomorrow we might see it like gap back down to 538. There's been a lot of weird movement on earnings. So personally, if I had to give any advice, I would probably sit this earnings play out. I know that earnings plays can work out for people, but generally they're not the best. And it seems like that in this type of market, it's definitely it has definitely been a little bit worse on them as well.
All right, just pulling up the questions. Let's see. A saying still holding FAZ shares and calls. Ripping. Let's check it out. FAZ. Yeah, it's doing pretty good. It's the short bank ETF. I'm glad it's working for you. It's pretty awesome to see up 4%, especially if you're holding shares and calls.
Yeah, I remember talking about this one yesterday, and I remember them talking about that position, and very nice to see it going up today. It wasn't looking good, at the end of the day yesterday, but it's nice to see it popping back up today for you.
For sure. So, Tom, what are you thinking about just the overall market right now? Like, I know we're still seeing like a rotation. We're seeing the Dow falling, and we have the QQQ up pretty well intraday.
Yeah, I mean, the QQQ is about the only strong indice that I'm seeing on the day. The SPY is starting to sell off. It's not looking too good. Same thing with the Dow. The Dow's not looking good at all. So honestly, I would just say that the tech seems like the way to go right now. I personally wouldn't even trade the QQQ. I would just go straight at some of these tech stocks like Apple, AMD, Nvidia, Palantir, Zoom. Seems like a lot of them are really like coiling for a breakout. And maybe even ARKK. Like, let's see how they're doing today. Yeah, up 1.3%. Very nice move actually out of ARKK. And they're very, I'm not going to say they're very similar to the QQQ, but they hold a lot of those like growth type of like tech stocks and stuff like that. So they are a pretty good thing to look at for like the growth stocks going up. And I honestly really like it. I think that a lot of these like tech stocks and growth stocks are looking very nice for like the next couple of weeks, a couple of days. But whenever we look at like the Dow and the SPY, it just looks terrible, Mike. Like the DIA just broke below that low of day, moving lower right now as we talk. And the SPY just keeps ripping down too. And it might be the banks, dragging those two indices down. I know that the QQQ doesn't have banks in there, if any. I'm not sure they have any banks in there, but it looks pretty bad out of the SPY and out of like the overall market. But I love how tech's flying. That's awesome. And definitely like watching Zoom, Palantir, and some of those other ones to just continue flying up to the upside like they have been over the past couple of weeks. And they have been consolidating. There was a couple of days where they were just kind of flat, kind of before Powell talked, but it looks like they're going to start moving pretty well again.
Alrighty, and then we have Corbin saying, after my best month ever, I've had the worst 2 weeks. What's the basis for your trades? Is it price action? Is it events or news? Technical analysis? Stock splits? Any advice on how to become consistently profitable? So, one thing to keep in mind is, let's say you have some strategy. Let's just say, just to keep things super, super simple, let's say you bought when an RSI was lower than 30 and you sold when it was greater than 70, right? I'm not a fan of RSI, but just for example, it's important to realize that no matter what type of strategy you have, there always will be waves, you can say. So there'll be times where, everything's going great and you're winning all of your plays. And then there will be drawdowns. Like no matter what type of strategy you have, even if you're doing something as safe as selling put options or, even doing like call credit spreads or iron condors, there's always going to be periods where you do have drawdowns. But for us, like it really depends on what's working best in the market at the time. The market is always adapting and always evolving. So that's great, but it's also pretty rough because you always have to be researching new strategies and seeing what works now. So a lot of it is just like adapting to the times. That question is enough for a whole video in itself, which I probably will make a video on this, but that's just like a nice, solid question, and hopefully that answer helps you. I know it's just a stream answer. I should just dedicate a whole video to that. But yeah, great question overall. We have Sean saying Nvidia is at $732 right now. It is exploding now to at $733. Yeah, I'm glad to see it's popping. I know a lot of people have some bullish positions on it. But overall, they are a powerhouse. And yeah, I think the split is awesome. But Tom, do you have any input on anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like maybe going back to like how you were talking about the indicators like RSI and stuff like that. I don't know if you'd agree, but I think it's best to look at as much stuff as you possibly can. Like, I'm not saying to have, a chart full of RSI, MACD, what are some of the other ones like Fibonacci retrace? I'm not saying to have like I'm not saying to have like a humongous chart with tons of indicators on them or anything, but getting as much data as you guys can get is pretty helpful, So like if you could get data about like highs of days and breakouts above supports and stuff like that, and price action, I think that's like one of the better ways to go. And it's always best to get as much data, like I said, as possible. You can look at like unusual options activity as well. There's tons of different things you could look at, and just definitely find what works for you. But don't just like look at one thing like RSI or MACD or SMAs and just expect those to give you like 100% accuracy in the market. Like, of course, I can look at NVIDIA's chart and say, oh, well, if you buy NVIDIA on the 100 SMA, generally it works out. But, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. There's trading emotions. You might buy at the 100 SMA, it might fall slightly below, and then you cut or something. There's a whole bunch of scenarios that could go on. So definitely look as much at it as much data as you can. And I think that'll be the main help. And it's very nice to see NVIDIA still breaking out all the way up to 734, possibly up to 735 soon, Mike. I mean, it just keeps extending up. And even like from whenever you were talking just a couple minutes ago, it's all the way up to 735.20 now.
Yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway from what Tom said would be to find out what works for you. There's going to be people that have used 20 different moving averages and stochastics and whatever, and if it works for them, that's awesome, you know. But for me, at least, it's not. That's not how I like to do things, you know. So find what works for you. But another thing I wanted to input is while it's great to, like Tom said, collect as much information as possible. That's awesome. Find what works for you. Check out a bunch of different things. And like I said, find what works for you. But one thing that so many people do that is a huge mistake is they will add 15 indicators or 20 indicators to their chart. And then it's called analysis paralysis. It's like when you have so much information in front of you, like there's so many contradicting signals and all that stuff, and it just leads to disaster and confusion. Honestly, I would say probably pick a couple indicators that you really like, or something like that, and stick to those. And research is everything. You know what I mean? Like you have to find what works for you, and to do that, you have to put in time on the weekends. You have to spend a ton of time. I would literally over the past 5 years, I would just spend basically my entire weekend messing around with stock charts and indicators and back testing, and I still spend a ton of time just researching on the weekends and back testing and analyzing, and because the market's always adapting. So when you think you have a strategy that is golden, and it might be golden for a couple days, it's always adapting. So keep that in mind. Then we have Jorge saying Enphase in run, keeping up with the good momentum. Definitely. I was just looking at Enphase. They're doing very, very well. Zoom's popping up too. I love it. Think you're muted, Tom.
Oh, I was muted. Nvidia's still on the run. Yeah, Enphase is looking very nice, actually. I like that move out of Enphase. And, one thing I want to say to keep in mind is, remember, Mike, you said Hindenburg even put an article about Enphase, and Enphase is still popping up very nicely, which is a good thing to see out of Enphase. It's looking pretty nice, actually, on its recovery back up, which is awesome to see. And then also, we saw that how they put out that article about DraftKings, and, DraftKings is actually still green today as well, up 0.7, 0.8% right now. And honestly, looking like a pretty good dip buy, I think, for over the next few days. And even if it keeps going lower, it'll just make an even better opportunity. But just wanted to point that out, how I remember how you told me how Enphase also was in a Hindenburg report a while ago as well, but they're actually doing pretty well on their own.
All right, and we have Sean saying, thanks guys for the daily vids and all the great content. Heading out, see you tomorrow. Well, thank you so much for joining in, Sean. Russ is saying AMC is going to 60. Let's check it out. AMC, it is popping. Yes, it is. There we go. It's up around 5% today. And yeah, that $60 resistance will be pretty big.
Yeah, I wonder how high it could go today if it starts to break through that. I mean, sometimes we see days where AMC will have a 20 or 30% day. I don't think I could see that happening today. It just doesn't seem like there's quite as much hype behind it as there was in the past. But who knows? We might see it if it starts to break out. And man, if it starts to pass above 60, I'd be pretty bullish on it. But for the rest of today, I'd be a little careful because it might hit 60 and consolidate and pop above it in pre-market or something tomorrow. And who knows, maybe we'll go back tomorrow of having the crazy Fridays. I don't know if you remember that, Mike, but in the market a long time ago, we used to have some crazy moves on Fridays. And I don't know if that was futures getting, futures contracts going away on Friday or options expiring on Friday or what, but the market used to be pretty worried on Fridays. And, everybody used to talk about just taking a break and quitting trading after 9 a.m. on Friday and stuff like that. So we'll have to see how the movement goes, but maybe we'll see a pretty big pop out of AMC tomorrow. If it can break out above 60, I think it would definitely make for an interesting trading day.
Tom, do you remember it was, I want to say maybe April last year or May or somewhere around then. It would be the last 10 minutes of market close and the market would just go crazy. Out of nowhere, every single day at 10 minutes before it closed. I don't know if you remember that or not. It didn't last too long, but it was a couple weeks, and it just literally went crazy.
Yeah, I do remember that. And that's maybe that's what I'm thinking of, man. Everybody was just, they were like, oh man, we have to get into the market on the last couple hours of Friday because it's just going to go berserk. And
Yeah.
that might have been the time. And man, it was crazy to see some of those stocks moving like that, especially like you said, like just within like the past like 30 minutes of the market and stuff. It was definitely getting a little crazy and a little volatile. And I'm sure a lot of people honestly got hurt because it was like the end of the day and it was Friday and they who knows, they were probably trading like some crazy options that were probably going to like get really hurt if you ended up holding them, and they might have got stuck with a few of them.
True that. Then we have Gerard saying DDOG is looking good. It is looking pretty good. We have Mike saying, let's see Baba have a good day, right? I mean, poor Baba has been getting smacked over the past couple months. It's looking good now, though, so I do have some hope for it. Jerry saying SPCE. Let's check out SPCE, Tom. It is looking
Wow.
pretty good. Really
Yeah,
good,
what's
actually.
going on with this one, Mike? It's actually like holding its ground and like looking like almost like a solid growth stock here as it's like holding these levels. And man, I'm a little upset that the CEO sold his shares down here and Kathy Wood got out. That's a pretty weird thing to hear, but we've been talking about these growth stocks for a while, and ever since May 11th, which was I keep calling it Palantir Day, ever since PLTR had that one day where it flew up, SPCE and all the growth stocks have just went straight up since that day. And SPCE was one of those stocks that posted a huge green candle on May 11th. Go check it out, guys. If you guys want to do some research later, go check out which stocks posted a huge green candle on May 11th, because all those stocks have pretty much moved straight up since that date. And SPCE has done very well with their test flights and stuff like that as well. And hopefully they can start to really keep rocketing up because this setup is looking pretty decent. And I think that they could keep going, especially if they break like the 3850 resistance. It honestly looks like a very nice move.
All right, Tom, do you have any last minute stocks, options, or anything for the rest of the day?
Yeah, I mean, still watching AMD. They had that huge deal with Google this morning. This is going to be big for AMD. They're finally, I feel like you've asked me about, what stocks I'm watching for the rest of the day, every day that we end the stream. And I feel like I've said AMD for the past 4 days in a row. And I've just been waiting for it to break out. And finally, we're seeing it move out above this. I will be looking possibly for an entry at some point today if we can get a little bit of movement back to the downside. But man, we're going to have to see what happens with it. Looks like a pretty solid setup. And it almost reminds me of like an Apple setup. If you go look at AMD's charts and Apple's charts side by side, I think that they look pretty similar, almost too similar, actually. They've just been kind of consolidating for the past like couple of years together right by themselves. And today they're both finally having a solid breakout. And honestly, both look like they could continue up to their resistance, with AMD possibly moving up to somewhere around $90 over the next few days, and with Apple possibly moving up to like 138.
Sounds good. Well, thank you guys so much for joining the stream today and asking great questions. We'll have another video on the main channel later today, but we hope you guys have an amazing